Mira Chen sat in the back row of the classroom, her eyes fixed on the holographic display at the front. Around her, the other cadets argued loudly about battle tactics and strategies. They were the children of admirals and generals, born into military families that had served the Galactic Coalition for generations. Their voices filled the room with confidence. Myra said nothing. She never did. Commander Vexler stood at the front of the class, his forearms gesturing at the battle simulation playing above them. He was a Zentari, tall and covered in obsidian scales that gleamed under the lights. His species had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Humans like Myra had only joined the Coalition 15 years ago. The Crothel swarm is predictable, Vexler said, his voice deep and commanding. They attack in waves, overwhelming their targets with numbers. The key is to hold the formation and wait for reinforcements. A cadet near the front raised his hand. It was Ko Verdix, another Zentari, and the top student in the class. What about human tactics, Commander? I heard they try to fight the swarm alone sometimes. Vexler's mouth curved into something like a smile. Human commanders are ... enthusiastic. They lack experience. Most of their solo engagements end in disaster. Only 3 humans have ever won against a swarm pack without support, and one of those battles is still classified. Laughter rippled through the classroom. Mira felt eyes turned toward her, the only human in advanced tactical warfare. She kept her face neutral and continued taking notes on her datapad. Earth is new to galactic warfare, Vexler continued. Their tactics are crude and predictable. They rely too much on improvisation and not enough on proven doctrine. Kale turned in his seat to look directly at Mira. I bet Chen here couldn't last 5 minutes against a swarm simulation.
More laughter.
Mira met his gaze steadily, but said nothing. She had learned that silence was often the best response. Vexler clapped his upper pair of hands together, drawing attention back to the front. Speaking of simulations, I have an announcement. Your final examination will be practical, not theoretical. Each of you will enter a simulation pod and fight through a historical battle. You will be graded on how well you perform compared to the original commander. Excited whispers filled the room. This was what they had all been training for. The battle list is now available on your datapads, Vexler said. Choose wisely. Some scenarios have very low survival rates, even in simulation. I expect most of you to achieve at least 60% efficiency compared to the original commander. Those who score above 80% will receive honors. Myra opened her datapad and scrolled through the list. She recognized most of the battles from her studies: the Siege of Mordantis, the Twin Star Gambit, the defense of Helios Prime. Each one was a famous victory led by legendary commanders. Then she saw it. Near the bottom of the list, redacted Frontier Station, Theta 7 to 3 years. Prior, her hands tightened on the datapad. The designation was vague, the details sanitized for training purposes, but she knew that battle. She knew it better than any other battle in the database. She knew it because she had been there. Kale's voice cut through her thoughts. What's wrong, Chen? Scared to pick a battle? Don't worry, I'll make this interesting. I bet you can't even survive whichever scenario you choose, let alone match the commander's performance. The other cadets watched, waiting for her response. Mira looked up from her datapad and met Kale's challenging stare. I'll take that bet, she said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken in class all week. Kale grinned, showing his sharp teeth. Excellent. When you fail, you'll admit in front of everyone that humans don't belong in this academy. And when I don't fail? Mira asked. Kale laughed. If you somehow manage to survive your simulation with above 60% efficiency, I'll apologize publicly and admit I was wrong about humans. But that's not going to happen. Commander Vexler watched the exchange with interest. A formal challenge between cadets. How traditional. Very well, I'll witness this wager. Chen, which battle have you selected? Mira's finger hovered over the Theta 7 designation. She had spent 3 years trying to forget that day, trying to move past it and become a real officer through proper training. Choosing this battle would bring everything back. But Kale and the others needed to understand something. They needed to understand that humans weren't just crude newcomers who got lucky. They needed to see what a human could really do. Theta 7, Mira said clearly. The classified frontier engagement. The room went silent. Even Vexler looked surprised. Chen, that battle has a 12% survival rate in simulation, the commander said slowly. Even experienced officers struggle with it. The scenario involves a crippled civilian vessel against 6 swarm hunter ships. The original commander won, but it's considered one of the most difficult tactical challenges in our database. I know, Mira said. Kale laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Perfect. This will be even more satisfying when you fail. Vexter studied Mira for a long moment. You have 1 week to prepare. I suggest you study the available files carefully, though most of the details remain classified. Dismissed. The cadets filed out of the classroom, talking excitedly about their chosen battles. Kale passed Mira's desk with a smug expression. I almost feel bad for you, Chen. Almost? Mira waited until the room emptied before standing. She looked at the holographic display, still showing swarm attack patterns. Her hands were shaking slightly. She clenched them into fists. She had survived Theta 7 once. 3 years ago, when she was just 17 years old. She had commanded a dying ship full of terrified scientists and somehow brought most of them home alive. The coalition military had classified everything, given her a medal she couldn't talk about, and offered her a place at the academy when she came of age. She had accepted on one condition: complete anonymity. She didn't want to be the miracle girl who survived the impossible. She wanted to be a real officer, trained properly, respected for her abilities and not her past. But now that past was about to become very present. Mira looked down at her data. Pad one more time. The Theta 7 file was sparse, most details redacted. But she didn't need the file. She remembered every second of those 6 hours. Every decision, every loss, every desperate gamble that somehow worked. 1 week, she whispered to herself. 1 week until she climbed into a simulation pod and relived the worst day of her life. 1 week until her classmates discovered that the quiet human girl in the back row was the classified commander. They had been studying 1 week until everything changed. Myra picked up her datapad and walked out of the classroom. The halls of the Galactic Military Academy stretched before her, filled with cadets from a dozen different species, all training to defend the coalition. She had wanted to be just another cadet, learning alongside everyone else. But maybe it was time to stop being silent. Maybe it was time to show them what humanity could do. Word count: 1,398. The simulation chamber buzzed with nervous energy. 23 cadets had already completed their battles over the past 2 days. The massive viewing screen showed their results posted on the wall, efficiency ratings ranging from 58% to Kale's impressive 84% on the Twin Star Gambit. Myra stood outside her assigned pod, staring at the closed door. Inside that pod, the Theta 7 scenario waited for her. 3 years of careful silence, 3 years of being just another cadet, was about to end. Chen. Commander Vexther's voice boomed across the chamber. You're up. Unless you want to withdraw and admit defeat. Kale stood with his friends near the viewing area, arms crossed and a confident smile on his face. The entire class had gathered to watch. Word had spread that the quiet human girl had chosen the hardest scenario in the database. Most expected her to fail spectacularly. I'm ready, Commander, Mira said. She climbed into the pod and the door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. The interior lit up with holographic displays surrounding her seat. She strapped herself in, feeling the familiar weight of the harness across her chest. This was different from a real ship, but similar enough. Her hands found the controls instinctively. The simulation loaded. Reality dissolved into the cold darkness of space. Mira sat on the bridge of the science vessel Ptolemy. Warning lights flashed red across every console. The damage report scrolled past her eyes. Engines at 40% capacity. Weapons systems minimal, shields failing. Hull breaches on 3 decks. 6 swarm hunter ships detected, the computer's calm voice announced. Distance 200,000 kilometers in closing. Estimated time to weapons range, for minutes. Through the viewport, Mira could see the purple and green swirls of the Theta Nebula. It was beautiful and deadly, full of radiation and gravitational eddies that made navigation dangerous behind her. Holographic crew members worked frantically at their stations. 47 people, all looking to her for orders. All trusting her to save them, just like before. "Captain, we should abandon ship," one officer said. "The escape pods. The swarm will pick off the pods one by one," Mira said quietly. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears. She hadn't spoken these words in 3 years, but they came back perfectly. "We stay with the ship." Outside the simulation pod, Commander Vexler watched the main display with his arms crossed. Around him, the cadets whispered amongst themselves. "She's not even trying to run," one cadet said. "She's going to get killed in the first 5 minutes." Another predicted. Kale smiled. "Told you. Humans don't understand swarm tactics." On the screen, the swarm ships appeared as dark shapes against the stars, moving in their characteristic pattern, a loose sphere that could tighten into a killing formation in seconds. Inside the pod, Mira's hands moved across the controls. She diverted power from life support to the engines, buying herself an extra 12% thrust. She calculated vectors in her head, plotting a course deeper into the nebula. "Captain, the radiation levels!" an officer protested. "We'll mask our signature," Mira finished. "Helm. Execute course Delta 7. Engineering, I need you to prep the probe launchers." "The probes." The engineer looked confused. "Captain, those aren't weapons." "I know," Myra said. She was already running calculations, her fingers flying across the tactical display. "Load them with reactor waste. Make them hot enough to read like missile launches on swarm sensors." Silence on the bridge. Then the crew moved to follow her orders. The Ptolemy dove into the nebula, and the swarm ships followed. Radiation washed over the hull, making the shields crackle and pop. Myra watched the sensor display carefully. The swarm ships spread out, trying to track her through the interference. "Now," she said calmly, the probe launchers fired. 12 probes shot out in different directions, each one blazing with radioactive heat. On swarm sensors, they would look like incoming missiles. The swarm ships reacted instantly, breaking formation to intercept the false threats. The hive mind was fast, but it wasn't instant. There was always a tiny delay when the swarm had to process multiple threats simultaneously. Mira used that delay. She pushed the Ptolemy through a narrow gap in the swarm formation, engines screaming in protest. 2 hunter ships turned to pursue, but she was already changing course again. Using the nebula's gravitational eddies to slingshot around a dense gas pocket outside the simulation. The viewing chamber had gone completely silent. Commander Vexler leaned forward, his tactical implant analyzing every move. His eyes widened slightly. "She's not improvising," he muttered. "She's executing a plan." On the efficiency display, numbers climbed steadily. 70%, 75%, 80%. Kale's smile faded. That's not possible. No cadet scores that high on Theta 7. Inside the simulation, the battle continued. Mira fought like someone who had done this before, because she had. Every maneuver was precise. Every decision was made with absolute confidence. She vented atmosphere from a damaged section, using the explosive decompression as thrust to dodge a plasma barrage. She overloaded the sensor array to create a electromagnetic pulse that temporarily blinded to swarm ships. She fired the Ptolemy's minimal weapons, not at the swarm ships themselves, but at chunks of nebula debris, sending radioactive asteroids tumbling into her pursuers. Paths. The efficiency rating climbed higher. 85%. 90%. 95%. "This is impossible," one cadet whispered. Myra forced the Ptolemy into a dangerous maneuver, skimming so close to a radiation pocket that the ship's hull plating began to melt. Behind her, 3 swarm ships tried to follow. 2 pulled away from the deadly radiation. The third, committed to the pursuit, flew straight into the pocket. Its shields failed. Its hull cracked. It tumbled away, disabled 1 down. 5 to go. The simulation continued for what felt like hours, but was actually 90 minutes. Mira fought with every trick she knew, every desperate tactic she had learned 3 years ago. When she was 17 and terrified and trying to save her father's crew, she sacrificed the ship's escape pods, launching them as decoys. She dumped the entire medical bay's supply of pharmaceuticals into space, creating a chemical cloud that confused swarm sensors. She even used the Ptolemy's research equipment, firing experimental gravitational probes that created tiny temporary singularities. 2 more swarm ships disabled, 3 remaining. But the Ptolemy was dying. Hull breaches on every deck, engines barely functional, life support critical. Mira made the hardest call, the one that still haunted her dreams. She ordered the crew to Section 13, then explosively decompressed, Sections 12 and 14. 13 people died in those sections. Their life signs vanished from the display, but the swarm-boarding organism that had attached to the hull was vented into space. Frozen and dead, the efficiency rating hit 99% in the viewing chamber. Commander Vexter stood frozen, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. His tactical implant was flashing warnings he couldn't process. "Check the simulation," he said hoarsely. "Check for tampering." "This isn't possible." The technician ran diagnostics. "No tampering, Commander. The simulation is authentic and unmodified." On the display, the efficiency rating flickered. 100%, then 101%, then 103%. Alarms sounded. The simulation automatically paused. You couldn't exceed 100% efficiency on a historical battle. The rating was based on comparing your performance to the actual original commander. Exceeding it meant you were somehow doing better than what actually happened. Commander Vexter slammed his hand on the emergency stop. "Get her out. Get her out of the pod now." Simulation pod door opened with a hiss. Mira sat inside, unmoving, her hands still on the controls. Her face was pale, and her eyes looked distant. Seeing something beyond the simulation chamber, she blinked slowly and focused on Commander Vexter standing in front of the pod. "Cadet Chen," Vexter said slowly, carefully. "You are accused of cheating. Explain how you achieved the impossible." The chamber was absolutely silent. Every cadet watched. Kale's mouth hung open in shock. Myra unstrapped herself and climbed out of the pod on shaky legs. She looked around at all the watching faces, then back at Commander Vexter. "I didn't cheat," she said quietly. "Then explain the efficiency rating," Vexter demanded. "You exceeded the original commander's performance. That's mathematically impossible unless you had access to classified information about the battle's weaknesses." Mira was silent for a long moment. 3 years of anonymity, gone. 3 years of being just another cadet, finished. "I knew the weaknesses," she said finally, "because I was the one who made those mistakes the first time. Nobody understood." "Not yet. I improved on my own performance," Mira continued, her voice growing stronger. "I knew exactly where I hesitated 3 years ago, where I could have adjusted shield frequencies 0.3 seconds faster, where I could have positioned the ship 47 meters further from an explosion. I knew because I lived it." Understanding dawned on Commander Vexter's face. His scales went pale. "Captain M. Chen," he whispered. "Provisional rank, civilian vessel commander by emergency protocol." "That was you?" Mira met his gaze steadily. "That was me." Chamber erupted in chaos. The simulation chamber exploded with noise. Cadets shouted questions at each other and at Mira. Some looked shocked, others confused, and a few angry as if she had personally deceived them. Commander Vexter's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The room went quiet immediately. His forehands clenched into fists as he stared at Mira. "Cadet Chen, you claim you commanded the Theta 7 engagement. That battle took place 3 years ago, yes sir," Mira said. "Which would make you 17 standard years old at the time," Vexter continued. "A minor. Children are not permitted to command military or civilian vessels in Coalition space under any circumstances." "Emergency Protocol 7, Myra said quietly. "When all commanding officers are dead or incapacitated on a civilian vessel, command authority passes to the highest-ranking surviving crew member. If no qualified crew remain, authority passes to the ship owner or their designated heir. My father was Captain David Chen. My mother was Chief Science Officer Yuki Chen. They both died in the first swarm attack. I was the captain's daughter and the only person left who knew how to fly the ship. The room was so silent that Mira could hear her own heartbeat. Kale stepped forward, his face twisted with disbelief. You're lying. This is some kind of trick. Humans lie when they're cornered. Verify it, Myra said simply. Pull the classified files. My identity was redacted from the official reports, but the data is there. Cross-reference. My DNA. My family records. My location 3 years ago. Commander Vexter pulled out his command tablet and began typing rapidly. His expression grew more troubled with each passing second. Finally, he looked up. The records are sealed at the highest level. I don't have clearance to access them. He looked at Mira with something like respect, mixing with anger. But the basic facts check out. David and Yuki Chen, chief officers of the science vessel Ptolemy, killed in action at Frontier Station Theta 7, survived by one daughter, age 17. Name redacted for security purposes. Security purposes, another cadet said bitterly. You mean they didn't want people to know a human teenager defeated a swarm pack when their trained officers couldn't? Vexter's scales darkened. Watch your tone, cadet. The decision to classify was made above my level. But his voice lacked conviction. They all understood the implications. Mira remained standing in front of the simulation pod, her arms at her sides. She looked smaller now, tired. They gave me a choice after it was over. Take a scholarship to the academy when I turned 18, or accept compensation and return to civilian life. I chose the academy because I needed to learn how to do it right. That A7 wasn't brilliant tactics. It was desperation and luck. People died because I didn't know what I was doing. 13 casualties, Vexter said, reading from his tablet. Out of 60 crew and passengers, that's a 78% survival rate against a swarm pack with no military support. Most trained commanders lose entire ships. 13 people who trusted me, Mira said, her voice hard. 13 people who would still be alive if I'd been better. Kale laughed, but it was a harsh, bitter sound. Unbelievable. We've been studying your battle all semester, and you were sitting right there in the back of the classroom. You let Commander Vexter call human tactics crude and predictable. You'll let me mock you for weeks. Mira turned to look at him, because I needed to know if I was actually good or if I just got lucky once. I needed teachers who would tell me when I was wrong, not teachers who treated me like some kind of hero. And I needed classmates who would challenge me honestly, not go easy on me because of my past. You made fools of us, another cadet said angrily.
No, Myra said.
You made assumptions about humans based on prejudice, not evidence. I just didn't correct you. Commander Vexter held up a hand before the argument could continue. Enough, Chen. You understand this changes everything. The Academy administration must be informed. Your anonymity is over. I know, Mira said. You'll likely be pulled from regular classes. They'll want to use you for recruitment, for propaganda, for political purposes. A human child who defeated the Swarmits, exactly the story Earth wants to tell. I know, Mira repeated. But I'm not leaving the academy. I'm not finished learning. Vexter studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. No, you're not finished. Despite your experience, you still have much to learn about proper military doctrine, fleet coordination, and leadership under normal circumstances. One desperate battle doesn't make you a complete officer. That's why I'm here, sir, Mira said. Then we continue, Vexter said. He looked around at the assembled cadets. All of you return to your quarters. Classes resume tomorrow morning. We will discuss this incident with the administration, but until they make a decision, Cadet Chen remains a student like any other. Dismissed. The cadets filed out slowly, many glancing back at Mira with expressions ranging from awe to resentment. Kale paused at the door, looking like he wanted to say something, but finally left without a word. Soon, only Mira and Commander Vexter remained in the simulation chamber. Should have told me, Vexter said quietly. When I made those comments about human tactics, about that battle specifically, you should have said something. Would you have believed me, sir? Myra asked. Or would you have thought I was just another arrogant human making up stories? Vexther's scales rippled with discomfort. He had no answer for that. I've been teaching that battle for 2 years, he said finally. I've studied every decision, every maneuver. I've written 3 tactical papers analyzing the commander's choices, and I never knew I was teaching the commander herself. He shook his head. The improvement in your simulation, the 3% efficiency gain, what did you change? Mira walked over to the main display and pulled up the tactical map. Here, at minute 32, in the actual battle, I hesitated for almost 2 seconds before ordering the probe launch. I was scared it wouldn't work. In the simulation, I didn't hesitate because I already knew it would work. That saved me from taking an extra hit to the rear shields. She pointed to another section. Here at minute 57. I positioned the ship 47 meters too close to the debris field I was using for cover. In reality, a piece of shrapnel tore through Section 8 and killed 2 crew members. In the simulation, I positioned us correctly. And here, she said, pointing to the moment that still haunted her at minute 109. I waited 90 seconds too long before ordering the explosive decompression. I was trying to find another way, trying to save everyone. Those 90 seconds let the swarm organism burrow deeper into the ship. If I'd given the order immediately, maybe only 5 people would have died instead of 13. Her voice broke slightly on the last word. Vexther saw tears forming in her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. You were 17 years old, Vexther said quietly. Facing an enemy that has destroyed experienced commanders, the fact that you saved 34 lives is remarkable. It should have been 47, Mira said. War is not perfect, Chen. Command is not perfect. You will learn that lesson many times in your career. He paused. I owe you an apology. I judged human tactical thinking without understanding its context. Your species is new to galactic warfare, yes, but that brings fresh perspectives we've lacked. What I called crude was actually adaptive. What I called predictable was actually innovative. Myra looked at him in surprise. Zenturi were proud and rarely admitted fault, especially to students. Thank you, sir, she said. Don't thank me yet, Vexther said grimly. The administration will descend on you like a swarm of politicians. They'll want to parade you around, use your story for recruitment, maybe even pull you out of training for public appearances. You'll have to fight to stay here and continue your education. I've fought worse things than politicians, Mira said. For the first time, Commander Vexther smiled. Yes, I suppose you have. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Chen, one more question. Why did you choose Theta 7 for your simulation? You could have picked any battle in the database. Why relive your worst day? Mira looked at the now dark simulation pod. Because Kale needed to understand something. They all did. They needed to see that humans don't just get lucky. We adapt. We survive. We win against impossible odds, not because we're better, but because we refuse to accept that something is impossible. And also, she added quietly, because I needed to prove to myself that it wasn't just luck, that I actually knew what I was doing, even when I was terrified and alone. Vexther nodded slowly. Did you prove it? Mira thought about the simulation, about how her hands had moved across the controls with confidence instead of fear. About how every decision had been clear instead of desperate. Yes, sir, she said. I think I did, Good Vexther said. Because tomorrow, everything gets harder. Are you ready for that? Mira straightened her shoulders and met his gaze. I've been ready since I was 17, Commander. I just needed to learn how to do it properly. Vexther left, and Mira was alone in the simulation chamber. She looked at the empty pod one more time, then walked to the door. 3 years of silence were over. 3 years of being nobody. Special had ended. Now came the hard part, proving that Theta 7 wasn't a fluke, and that she deserved to be here not because of what she survived, but because of what she could become. The Academy Council met in emergency session the next morning. Mira sat in a chair facing 5 senior officers from different coalition species, all looking at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to disapproval. Commander Vexler stood to the side, his forearms crossed. Admiral Korath. A massive Dravion with crystalline skin that refracted the light into rainbow patterns, spoke first. Cadet Chen, you have put this academy in a difficult position. You enrolled under false pretenses. With respect, Admiral, I enrolled under my real name and provided all required documentation, Mira said calmly. I simply didn't volunteer information that was classified by Coalition intelligence. Don't play word games with us. Child, snapped Commander Shira, a Vaxian whose telepathic abilities made her antennae glow softly. You knew what you were. You let your instructors and fellow cadets believe you were just another inexperienced human. Because I am an inexperienced human, Mira said. I survived one battle through desperation and improvisation. That doesn't make me a trained officer. That's why I'm here. You deceived your classmates, Shira continued. You let them mock humanity while you hid your accomplishments. Want an honest feedback? Mira replied. Not special treatment. Tell me, Commander, if everyone had known who I was on day one, would they have challenged me? Would they have pointed out my mistakes? Or would they have treated me like something fragile and special? Shira's antennae flickered, but she didn't answer. The third council member, General Torvin, of the Kresh Dominion, leaned forward. His species looked like bipedal lions, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder. Perhaps we should hear the full story. The Theta 7 files are sealed, but you can speak freely now. Tell us what happened. Mira took a breath. She had told this story to investigators, to therapists, to the classification board, but never to people who would understand the tactical implications. 3 years ago, I was 15 years old, she began. My parents were scientists. My father commanded the Ptolemy, and my mother led the research team. I grew up on starships. I spent my childhood on the bridge, watching my father work, studying navigation and tactics, because it was the only way to feel close to him when he was busy. She paused, gathering the memories. We were surveying gravitational anomalies near Frontier Station Theta 7, an unmapped region. The Coalition thought the area was secure. They were wrong. The swarm appeared without warning, 6 hunter ships dropping out of a spatial distortion we'd been studying. Our shields were down because we were scanning, and we weren't a military vessel. We had minimal weapons, just enough to scare off pirates. The first barrage killed my father and most of the bridge crew. My mother died trying to seal a hull breach. 17 people gone in the first 90 seconds. Mira's voice remained steady, but her hands gripped the arms of her chair. The senior surviving officer was the chief engineer. He immediately began evacuation procedures, which was standard protocol. But I'd been studying swarm tactics because I was interested in the war. I knew the escape pods would be picked off. The swarm doesn't let anyone escape, they harvest all biomass. That's why I invoked Emergency Protocol 7. The engineer tried to argue, but the ship's computer confirmed my authority. I was the captain's heir on a civilian vessel with no surviving command officers. The authority was legal, even if I was just a kid. Admiral Korath made a sound like grinding crystals. A 15-year-old child declaring herself captain. This should have been rejected. 17, sir, Mira corrected. And the computer didn't care about my age. The protocol was clear. Besides, what was the alternative? Die according to proper procedure? Continue, General Torvin said quietly. The battle lasted 6 hours, Mira said. I used every trick I could think of. I'd read about swarm hive mind communication delays, so I created multiple false targets to overwhelm their processing. I used the nebula's radiation to mask our signature. I weaponized our scientific equipment, gravity probes, radiation collectors, chemical storage. Everything became a weapon or a decoy. But it wasn't enough. The swarm adapted. They always do. One of their boarding organisms attached to our hull despite everything I tried. It was burrowing into Section 13, where most of the remaining crew had sheltered. Her voice grew quieter. I had a choice. Wait and try to fight it inside the ship where it would kill everyone. Or explosive decompression vent, 3 sections to space. 13 people were in those sections. 13 people who trusted me. I gave the order. I killed 13 people to save 34 others. The council chamber was silent. After that, I faked a catastrophic failure, dumped coolant, shut down the engines, made us look dead in space. We drifted for 90 minutes while the swarm ships searched. I couldn't even let the crew know we were alive because any electromagnetic activity might give us away. Everyone sat in the dark, in silence, thinking we were about to die. When the swarm finally moved on, I restarted the engines with what little power remained and made a desperate burn toward the Coalition patrol routes. We ran into a patrol ship 6 hours later. I'd been awake for 3 days straight by then. Mira looked up at the council members. The Coalition officers who found us couldn't believe what happened. They classified everything immediately. They said a human civilian child defeating a swarm pack was too politically complicated. It would embarrass the military, create recruitment issues, and make Earth look like it was sending children to war. They offered me a scholarship to this academy when I turned 18, and I accepted. But I asked for one thing in return: anonymity. I wanted to be trained properly. I wanted to learn from the best, without everyone treating me like I was special or fragile or a propaganda tool. Commander Shira Santeni had stopped glowing. "You wanted to prove you deserved to be here." "Yes, ma'am," Mira said. Admiral Korath shifted in his seat, his crystalline body creating soft, chiming sounds. "Your tactical performance at Theta 7 was studied by our best analysts. The consensus was that the commander showed innovative thinking but also made several critical errors that cost lives. The battle is used as a teaching tool specifically because it shows both brilliant adaptations and costly mistakes." "I know, sir," Mira said. "I've sat through every analysis. I've watched my classmates critique my decisions. I've heard Commander Vexler explain everything I did wrong, and he was right about most of it. I should have ordered the decompression sooner. I should have positioned the ship better at multiple points. You should have been at home studying for school exams." General Torvin interrupted, his leonine face softening. "Not commanding a dying ship against the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy? The fact that you saved anyone is remarkable. The fact that you then came here to learn how to do it correctly shows wisdom beyond your years. What happens now?" Mira asked. The council members looked at each other. Finally, Admiral Korath spoke. "That depends on you, Cadet Chen. The news will spread. By tomorrow, every cadet in this academy will know your story. The media will want interviews. Politicians will want appearances. Your life as an anonymous student is over." "I understand, sir." "We can protect you from some of it," the Admiral continued. "We can restrict media access, refuse interview requests, keep you focused on your training. But we cannot stop the coalition government from requesting your participation in recruitment drives or political events. You're a powerful symbol, a human who defeated the swarm at 17. "I'm not a symbol," Myra said firmly. "I'm a cadet trying to become an officer." "Now both now?" Commander Shira said, not unkindly. "The question is whether you can handle being both." Mira thought about this. She had known, when she chose Theta 7 for her simulation, that this moment would come. She had chosen it anyway because Kale and the others needed to understand that humans weren't just lucky newcomers. "I can handle it," she said. "As long as I stay here and continue my training, I won't be pulled out for recruitment tours. I won't be used as propaganda. I'll do interviews if required, but on my terms. And I stay in regular classes with my fellow cadets." "You'll face resentment," General Torvin warned. "Some students will feel you deceived them. Others will resent that you're better than them, despite being younger and less trained. It will be difficult." "Good," Mira said. "I need difficult. I need people who will challenge me and push me and not treat me like I'm fragile. That's how I get better." Admiral Korath's crystalline body chimed softly as he moved. "Very well. You will continue as a cadet, but you will also serve as a tactical consultant for our analysis of swarm behavior. Your first-hand experience is too valuable to waste. Commander Vexler will oversee your continued education." Vexler nodded, his scales rippling with approval. "One more thing," the Admiral said. "Your wager with cadet verdicts. You achieved above 60% efficiency on your simulation. He owes you a public apology." "I'll speak to Kale privately," Mira said. "He doesn't need to be humiliated. He just needed to understand that his prejudice was wrong." Generous, Shira observed, considering how he treated you. He pushed me to prove myself, Mira said. Without his challenge, I might have stayed silent forever. Sometimes the people who push us hardest are the ones who help us most, even if they don't mean to. The council dismissed her, and Mira left the chamber with Commander Vexther. Outside, she could see cadets whispering and pointing at her through the windows. It begins, Vexther said quietly. Yes, sir, Myra agreed. Are you ready? Mira thought about Theta 7, about 6 hours of terror and desperate decisions. She thought about 3 years of silence, watching and learning. She thought about the simulation, proving to herself that she actually knew what she was doing. I'm ready, she said. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But she had survived worse. She was ready to stop being the silent one. 3 months had passed since the simulation. 3 months since Mira's secret became public knowledge. The academy had changed. And so had she. She stood in the tactical briefing room with a dozen other cadets, watching Commander Vexther explain a complex fleet maneuver. When he finished, he looked directly at her. Cadet Chen. Analysis. The room went quiet. This had become routine, but Mira still felt the weight of everyone's attention. Some faces showed respect, others resentment, and a few showed curiosity. The formation assumes the swarm will maintain their standard attack pattern, Mira said, standing. But they adapt. If they recognize the trap, they'll shift to a dispersal formation instead. I'd recommend placing reserve ships here and here, she pointed at the tactical display, to catch them if they break pattern. Vexther nodded. Good. Always plan for adaptation. The swarm learns from every encounter. We must learn faster. The lesson continued. After class, Mira gathered her materials and headed for the door. A shadow fell across her path. Cale Verdict stood there, but his expression had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced with something more complicated. Chen, he said, do you have a moment? Of course, Mira replied. They walked to one of the Academy's observation decks, where massive windows showed the stars beyond. For a moment, neither spoke. I've been avoiding this conversation, Cale said finally. I owe you an apology, and not just for the bet. I treated you terribly. I mocked you, questioned your right to be here, and dismissed your entire species as inferior. And all that time, you were. I was just another cadet, Mira finished. That's all I wanted to be. But you weren't, Cale said, frustration in his voice. You were the Theta 7 commander. You defeated a swarm pack at 17. You're better than most of us will ever be, and I was too prejudiced to see it. I'm not better, Mira said firmly. I survived one desperate battle. You've been trained in proper tactics since childhood. Your fleet. Coordination skills are far superior to mine. Your understanding of multi-ship operations is something I'm still learning. We have different strengths. Cale looked at her searchingly. Why didn't you ever defend yourself? All those times I insulted humans, insulted you could have shut me down instantly by revealing who you were. Why stay silent? Mira turned to look at the stars. Because I needed to hear the truth. If everyone had known about Theta 7 from the start, they would have treated me differently. Teachers would have gone easy on me. Classmates would have been afraid to challenge my ideas. I would never have known if I was actually improving or if people were just being polite. You wanted honest criticism? Cale said slowly. I needed it, Myra corrected. I made mistakes at Theta 7 that cost lives. I couldn't afford to make those same mistakes again just because people were too impressed to correct me. Your challenges, as much as they hurt, made me better. You forced me to think harder, defend my ideas, and prove myself. I should thank you for that. Cale shook his head. I don't deserve thanks. I was cruel. You were prejudiced, Mira said. There's a difference. Cruelty is intentional harm. Prejudice is learned assumptions. You can unlearn those. I'm trying, Cale said quietly. These past months, I've been studying human tactical innovations. The way your species approaches problems is different from ours. We Zentari have thousands of years of military tradition. We rely on proven doctrine and established formations. Humans improvise and adapt because you're new to galactic warfare. Neither approach is superior. They're complementary. That's what I've been learning too, Mira said. That A7 worked because I improvised desperately. But improvisation alone isn't enough. I need the foundation of proper training, the understanding of why certain doctrines exist. Commander Vexler has helped me see that. It's changed too, Kale observed. His entire curriculum is different now. He presents human tactics as valid alternatives rather than crude mistakes. He's even rewritten his analysis of Theta 7 to reflect your actual decision-making process rather than assuming you were just lucky. Mira smiled slightly. He made me a consultant. I've spent hours explaining why I made certain choices, what information I had available, what I was thinking during critical moments. It's been strange seeing my worst day analyzed from an academic perspective. The other cadets talk about you constantly, Kale said. Some resent that you're treated as special. Others treat you like some kind of legend. Neither is fair to you. I know, Mira said, but I'm learning to handle it. I speak up in class now, contribute to discussions, help other cadets when they struggle. I'm not hiding anymore. That's good, Kale said. He was quiet for a moment, then added, I want to ask something. Will you form a study group with me? You and me, working through advanced tactical scenarios together. I think we could learn from each other. Mira looked at him in surprise. You want to study with me? You see patterns I miss because of your improvisation background, Kale explained. I have the formal training you're still developing. Together, we'd be stronger. I've already asked Shenra and Tlok to join too. They're excellent at logistics and strategic planning. A human two's Intari, a Vaxian, and a Dravian, Myra said thoughtfully. We'd cover most of the major tactical philosophies in the coalition. Exactly, Kale said. What do you say? Mira extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Kale looked at it for a moment, then carefully grasped it, mimicking the handshake he'd seen in cultural training. I say yes, Mira said. Let's learn from each other. Over the following weeks, the study group met regularly. They worked through complex scenarios, challenged each other's assumptions, and developed integrated strategies that combined different tactical philosophies. Word spread, and soon other cadets were asking to join sessions or observe their discussions. Then came the day. Everything changed again. The Academy's emergency alarm sounded during an evening study session. All cadets were ordered to battle stations for what they assumed was a drill, but Commander Vexler's voice over the communication system was tense. This is not a drill. Swarm scout ships have entered the system. All fourth-year cadets report to your assigned vessels. Lower-year cadets remain at the Academy. Mira was a third-year cadet. She should have stayed behind. But as the senior students rushed to their ships, Admiral Korith's voice came over her personal communicator. Cadet Chen, report to Hangar 7. The destroyer Vigilant needs a tactical consultant. This is voluntary. You may refuse. Mira looked at her study group. Kale nodded. Go. Show them what humans can do, she ran. The Vigilant was a modern coalition destroyer, fast and well-armed. Its captain, an experienced Kresh commander named Shara, greeted Mira on the bridge. Chen, I've read about Theta 7. Today, you're here as an observer and consultant only. I'm not putting a cadet in command. But if you see something I miss, speak up. Swarm encounters are your specialty. Understood, Captain Mira said. The Vigilant launched with 5 other Academy ships, a small training fleet that was suddenly facing real combat. 3 swarm scout ships appeared on sensors, probing the system's defenses. Standard dispersal formation, Captain Shara ordered. We'll engage at maximum range and drive them back. Mira watched the tactical display. Something felt wrong. The swarm scouts were moving too predictably, almost inviting engagement. Captain Mira said carefully, This feels like Theta 7. The scouts are acting as bait. There could be hunter ships waiting in stealth. Shara frowned. Sensors show nothing. The swarm use spatial distortions to hide, Myra said. The same kind my parents were studying when they were attacked. If you engage the scouts, the hunters will decloak behind you. That's speculation, Shara's first officer said. It's experience, Mira countered. I've seen this pattern. They sacrifice scouts to draw you in, then hit you from behind. Captain Shara studied the display, then made a decision. All ships, reverse formation. Put our heaviest shields toward the rear quadrant. Weapons, prepare firing solutions for targets that don't exist yet. Captain, the weapons officer asked. Trust me, Shara said. Or rather, trust Chen. They engaged the scouts at long range. The swarm ships took damage but held position, almost as if waiting for something. Then, exactly where Myra had predicted. Space twisted and 4 swarm hunter ships appeared behind the Coalition formation, but the Coalition ships had already reversed their shields. The ambush failed. All ships, focus fire, Captain Shara ordered. Chen was right, it's a trap, but we're ready for it. The battle lasted 14 minutes. The Vigilant and its sister ships destroyed all 7 swarm vessels with minimal damage and no casualties. It was clean, efficient, and nothing like the desperate struggle at Theta-7 after the battle. Captain Shara looked at Mira with respect. You saved this fleet. If we'd walked into that ambush unprepared, we'd have lost at least 2 ships. You made the decision to trust me, Mira said. That took courage. No, Shara said. That took sense. You fought the swarm and survived. Your experience is valuable. I'd be a fool to ignore it. Back at the academy, news of the engagement spread quickly. Mira had warned a fleet about a swarm ambush based on her Theta-7 experience, and her advice had prevented casualties. The next day, a junior cadet approached her in the hallway. Cadet Chen, I'm struggling with spatial combat analysis. Could you help me understand how you read enemy patterns? Of course, Mira said. Meet me in the library after classes. More cadets started asking for help. Her study group expanded to include students from all years and species. Mira found herself teaching as much as learning, sharing insights from Theta-7 while absorbing the formal training she'd missed. One evening, Commander Vexther found her in the library. Surrounded by tactical displays and eager students, You've come a long way from the silent cadet in the back row, he observed. I'm not hiding anymore, Myra said. I can't. Too many people know now. Is that so terrible? Vexther asked. Mira thought about it. No, it's different, but not terrible. I wanted to earn respect through my abilities, not my past. But I'm learning that my past is part of my abilities. Theta-7 taught me things no classroom could. Sharing those lessons helps others, and teaching them helps me understand them better. Wisdom, Vexther said. You're becoming the officer you wanted to be, Chen, not just a survivor, but a leader. 6 months after the simulation, Mira stood in the same briefing room where her secret had been revealed. But now, she stood at the front, presenting a tactical analysis to Commander Vexther's class. The key to fighting the swarm is understanding their limitations, she explained. They adapt quickly, but they're still bound by hive mind communication lag, create multiple threats simultaneously, and they struggle to prioritize. They're deadly, but not invincible. Kale raised his hand. What about their boarding organisms? Standard protocol says to avoid them at all costs. Sometimes you can't avoid them, Mira said quietly. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. Explosive decompression is effective, but costly. The key is acting quickly, before they penetrate too deep into your ship. The class listened intently. No mockery, no dismissive laughter. Just students learning from someone who had fought and survived. After class, Mira walked to the Academy's Memorial Hall. She stood before a wall listing officers who had